Good afternoon and good morning to those out west. We are so excited to have you guys for today, and we're just going to give it one more minute and we will go ahead and start with today's event. My name is Ashlyn Roberts, and I'm with the Small Business Roundtable, the largest coalition of small business advocates in the country. Welcome to today's event, a celebration of women's entrepreneurship. In honor of Women's History Month, we are applauding the more than 12 million American women entrepreneurs hard at work that generate $1.8 trillion a year for the US economy. Today's event will be on the record, and a recording of this event will be featured on our website at www.smallbusinessroundtable.org. If you would like to ask questions during today's panel, please send questions through the chat function located at the bottom of your screen. These questions will be addressed during the question and answer portion of our panel event. Finally, if you have any questions or follow-up, please feel free to email myself at ashlyn@smallbusinessroundtable.org. Before we begin, I would like to call attention to the recent violence against the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Targeted hate and violence are unacceptable, and the Small Business Roundtable stands with the AAPI community during this challenging time. We are particularly proud of the National Asian Pacific Islander American Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship, National ACE, a critical member of the SBR family. SBR is joining millions of Americans recognizing today as the National Day of Action and Healing to stop Asian hate, and are committed to bringing nationwide attention to the rise in anti-AAPI discrimination, racism, and violence. To learn more about how to participate, visit www.asianamericandayofAction.com. The Small Business Roundtable is a coalition of leading small business and entrepreneurship organizations dedicated to advancing policy, securing access, and promoting inclusion to benefit the businesses at the heart of the American economy. We are proud to represent a diverse group of organizations committed to supporting small businesses, the backbone of the American economy. This will be the first event in a series by SBR celebrating the hard work of women entrepreneurs and exploring important issues to the women-owned business community. We have quite the lineup of women leaders today. Hearing first from Congresswoman Marie Newman of Illinois and Natalie Cofield, Assistant Administrator of the Office of Women's Business Entrepreneurship at the Small Business Administration, followed by a discussion with moderated question and answer with influential thought leaders with the women's entrepreneurship community. Following this discussion, we will share remarks provided by Senator Jackie Rosen, Representative Judy Chu, and Representative Chrissy Houlihan. Provided to kick off the event, I am honored to introduce Congresswoman Marie Newman. A freshman member in this 117th Congress, Congresswoman Newman represents Illinois' 3rd Congressional District, which covers the southwest side of Chicago, as well as its surrounding suburbs. A lifelong advocate for growing small businesses, protecting healthcare rights, strengthening our infrastructure, and building a greener economy, Congresswoman Newman is the first woman in history to represent Illinois' 3rd Congressional District in the House of Representatives. In Congress, she currently serves on the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, House Committee on Small Business, Congressional Labor Caucus, House Democratic Manufacturing Working Group, Democratic Women's Caucus, and the Vice Chair of Communications for the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Congresswoman, thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Well, thank you. I couldn't be more pleased to be speaking with you all today. You know, I'm a former small business owner myself, and I'm very intimate with the challenges of being both a women-owned business as well as just a small business owner. It's hard enough to be a small business owner on your own, let alone being a woman at the helm with all the challenges associated with that. That said, we are making a lot of progress. I feel right at home being very frank with these discussions because I've had these discussions with various groups, entrepreneurial groups, innovation groups, small business groups. My former small business was a management consulting business, so very male dominated field. So I'm comfortable today having all these great discussions with you all. And just let me start by thanking all of you for being female entrepreneurs. I think we all know that who we call when we have a very complex, technical, stressful problem. Who do we call? We call a busy woman, don't we? But let me start by saying that the talent, ambition, and dedication of the women we're celebrating today is nothing short of contagious and inspirational. I just want you to know that these are the things that energize me. So bravo on all of you for doing this great work, but then also telling all of these folks by virtue of giving them the awards that you did a good job. And I think that it's critical we continue to recognize and celebrate America's women entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses every year. And what I might add to that, that is really critical to the discourse here is that we don't say enough about women in executive positions that are not owners. I think we're making great progress there, but I think we also have to fight hard and continue to fight hard for executive women in those positions. And you know, this month is Women's History Month, but we should be doing this every single month, right? Without all of the historic accomplishments and glass ceilings that you've all shattered, many of us simply wouldn't be here. I'm not here today because other folks didn't work hard. They did. There are, you know, thousands and millions of women that came before me that worked really hard and poked out through the ceiling, like Shirley Chisholm and more. But for decades now, and during this pandemic, our female entrepreneurs have overcome extraordinary challenges and adversity. And yet, more work needs to be done to ensure you are all receiving the support you deserve. We're seeing a growing number of women-owned businesses across the country, and we have to build on that momentum. And I think that one interesting output of this pandemic, and we don't have data on this yet, is that a lot of women decided that, you know, I can't go back to the workforce because I have a school in my home and I have a job in my home and my husband's job is here too. Some of them decided to start their own businesses. So when we get data on that, I'll report back, but I'm excited about that one. You know, the CARES Act, for example, during the pandemic provided a waiver on the matching fund requirement for women business centers, or known as WBCs. And that financial relief allowed women business centers to offer great support to women-owned businesses seeking help during the pandemic. And that is great. And we're so proud that that happened. But believe me, the pandemic relief packages are not done yet. And while this waiver is expected to end on June 30th, 2021, I hope to introduce legislation to further extend this waiver through the fiscal year 2022. I think that's the right thing to do. And now is not the time to let that support expire. I really believe strongly in this, and we're investigating how we can make that happen. I also want to be clear, we can't just solely support women-owned businesses. We have to support our women workers because this is what runs our country. So I talked a moment ago about the executives, but our rank and file workers that are female, that wear the burden of the world on their shoulders every day, are really critical. Yesterday, I was at a press conference here for the Service Employees Union. I'm very close to the labor movement here, as well as in the nation. And one of the points I made is that frequently service jobs are female and women of color, and we have to start better supporting them. We have to pay them accurately, we have to support them, we have to protect them, and make sure that they have a good workplace and available to them. So the reality is that far too many are mistreated and abused as we go along here, and we see it all too frequently. And unfortunately, domestic violence affects all women across working fields and all levels of income. And that's why I was so proud to be a part of the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act. So proud to vote for that piece of legislation. It will really support folks in the workplace. But, you know, for many survivors, employment is critical to having economic independence from their abuser. My amendment ensures resources are in place to support women working or running our smallest of businesses. I'm very proud of the work we did on that amendment, but more can be done. In Congress, I will continue to ensure that we provide supports for our women workers and entrepreneurs always. You had that commitment from me. And we have an obligation to support one another on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's what this group does incredibly well. So be ambassadors, encourage everyone to recognize one another, celebrate one another, and thank you very much for letting me join today. And my office is always an open door for ideas and innovation around women entrepreneurs. So don't hesitate to reach out. And I thank you for your time today, and everybody stay well.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And I could not agree more with your remarks. Thank you for taking the time today. Next, I am thrilled to introduce Natalie Cofield, the Assistant Administrator for the Office of Women's Business Ownership at the Small Business Administration. In this role, Natalie acts as a senior executive, providing executive oversight, management, leadership, and championship of female entrepreneurship. She will oversee the largest expansion of the Women's Business Center network in the history of the SBA across its nearly 147 footprint, more than $70 million in federal grant making to support the growth of women-led firms. Cofield is a seasoned entrepreneur and executive with over 15 years of experience in securing diverse capital, building strategic partnerships, and leading state and local economic development programs to successfully incubate and scale small business development and expansion initiatives in communities throughout the United States. Natalie, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to all our viewers for the Small Business Roundtable. As was just mentioned, my name is Natalie Madeira Cofield, and I am the newly appointed Assistant Administrator leading the Office of Women's Business Ownership. The Office of Women's Business Ownership is the voice of women business owners throughout the federal government. Our mandate is both to support our organizations through women's business centers, where we have over the last year awarded nearly $70 million worth of funding to 135 women business centers in 135 cities across this nation, as well as to advocate, to empower, educate, and inspire women entrepreneurs, ensuring that they have access to capital, access to resources, and access to government contracts. I come to this role from more than 15 years of experience working both as an entrepreneur as well as a champion of economic empowerment in communities across the country. I started a women's organization with 30 women in a room and grew it to a national organization with more than 60,000 women and 20 chapters across the country. I know firsthand what it feels like to build something from the ground up. I know about the challenges of access to capital. I know about the important role that business resource providers play in the broader ecosystem. And I also know just how important and critical entrepreneurship is in communities of color across this nation. I wanted to share on behalf of the Small Business Administration a few very important resources and tools that may be of assistance to you if you have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. More specifically, as we have heard, the American Rescue Plan was recently passed, and in that passage, there was a number of different funding opportunities to support and to further stimulate the U.S. economy. There is $7.25 billion that was extended in PPP funds. If you are in need of support to assist your business in keeping its doors open and to keeping employees employed, please consider applying and learning more about the PPP program today. We also have a $28.6 billion in a forthcoming restaurant grant program. And we're excited to also have $16.5 billion coming from the Small Business Administration for the Shuttered Venues program, which is a grant program to support the entertainment industry, live event industry, museum industry, which has also been considerably impacted by COVID-19. When we look at the landscape and how COVID has impacted all of our everyday lives, some of us are mothers, some of us are wives, and we have families of our own at home. And as you had just heard from the Congresswoman, COVID has disproportionately impacted women across the board. Women have dropped out of the labor force at historically high rates. In fact, this is actually the highest rate of women's non-participation in the labor force since the late 1980s. With that being said, one of the greatest reasons for this is the dual role that women have played for many years, being both primary caregivers to their families, as well as hard-earning women working in corporate America or as entrepreneurs. And so one of the things that the administration is also very excited to share and wants everyone to know about is that there was $50 billion worth of relief that was included in the American Rescue Plan to provide childcare and family care for families throughout the United States of America. I really encourage you, if you have been impacted by COVID from the perspective of not being able to care for your child or to have someone watch your family while you continue to try to move forward with your career or your entrepreneurial endeavors, that you learn more about that particular program as well. In conclusion, I will just say that on behalf of the Small Business Administration, our women's business centers, our small business development centers, our veterans business centers, our native business centers, our faith-based initiatives, our international trade centers, we stand as a resource for small businesses. We are designed to aid the most important fabric of the US economy, and that is the entrepreneur and the small business owner. So whether you are looking for disaster relief, or you are looking for a lending and small business loans through our Office of Capital Access, where we work with intermediaries to provide various types of loan programs from microloans to working capital and asset loans, to you need technical assistance or you need access to a network, the Small Business Administration has been here. We encourage you to connect with us, to visit us at sba.gov, and to continue to persevere during these very trying times as we come out of this circumstance and look forward to seeing the vibrancy of your small businesses helping to further advance our economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie, for those remarks and resources. Next, we will have a panel discussion of key women's business leaders moderated by Candace Waterman, President and CEO of Women Impacting Public Policy. Candace, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Ashlyn. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone, and happy Women's History Month. I am Candace Waterman, President and CEO of Women Impacting Public Policy, and I am honored to serve as your moderator today for our discussion. I am also very honored to share the virtual stage with all of these amazing women that we are going to have today. We know that many have been impacted and are still being impacted by COVID, and our hearts and thoughts go out to you. We hope that you, your teams, and your families are staying safe and healthy during these times. I'm excited for today's session as we celebrate Women's History Month by really talking about the resiliency and tenacity of women business owners across the country. Today, I'm joined by three powerhouse business leaders: Jen Earl, CEO, National Association of Women Business Owners, more lovingly known as NAWBO; Corinne Hodges, CEO, Association of Women's Business Centers; and Gloria Williams, founder and CEO of Foot Nanny, Inc. Ladies, welcome to the session today.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you so much for convening this important panel of women leaders. As the National Association of Women Business Owners, or as we fondly call it, NAWBO, celebrates our 46th year, I'm pleased to say that despite the hardships of the past year, our women business owners are hopeful for the future ahead. We are still more than 50 chapters strong across the country, including a virtual chapter, and NAWBO focuses on the 4 C's of women business owners: access to capital. We understand the necessity of helping women overcome barriers to access to capital and educate women more on the importance of investing in your business to help scale. Community. Business owners need an avenue that allows them to connect with other individuals who have been through similar challenges, NABO provides this community, and there are so many communities out there for women in business. So if you are not connected to a community, please go find your people. Confidence. Women business owners need to often feel alone, and regardless of the pandemic, and we need to make sure that nobody feels isolated. We must ensure that women have the confidence to innovate and try new things to revitalize their businesses. And Congress, in collaboration with the other amazing women organizations on this panel, we are the voice of the millions of women business owners around the country on Capitol Hill to work to ensure that lawmakers understand what women business owners need to remain strong. As Helen Keller said, optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. We held on to optimism the very best we could this past year. I believe our women business owners understood and understood their resiliency through the pandemic. We built our community online and supported one another through this journey. We pulled together and felt pride in being a part of something bigger than ourselves. We have seen great loss, but also great gain. According to a recent report in our partnership with Gusto, we found that women are driving the new business starts, with nearly 47% of those businesses started by minorities. They saw a need for their families and they fulfilled it. Our women are strong. We want the drive to drive the recovery. We fight for our businesses and for our employees. And many of our business owners have been fighting for a while. They've been taking care of their children at home. 61% of women with children at home reported that school closures impacted their businesses, and 30% of those owners said that they've had to scale back due to childcare needs. Regardless, these women have done what needs to be done. As Rosa Parks said, knowing what must be done does away with fear. We take each day at a time and do not fear what lies ahead. We stand ready to help and rebuild our economy. Thank you so much for including me today. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Jen. I am going to turn it over to Corinne.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'm just so excited to be here. As the CEO of the Association of Women's Business Centers, I work each and every single day, and I mean, that means Saturdays and Sundays too, most weeks, to help ignite opportunities for women who want to start and grow a business. And we do this through the support of 135 women's business centers nationally. This was mentioned earlier, but thanks to the funding afforded through the CARES Act in 2020 and a record expansion of our program, in January, there are more women's business center resources available in your communities than ever before in history. And it's no coincidence that women are breaking barriers and making their dreams come true right here, right now, during Women's History Month. Really, it's the power of entrepreneurship, that spirit, with the synergy of people like we've seen on the call already today, and who I know we'll hear from in a moment, that are behind each and every one of you in your successes. So likewise, women's business centers are there to be your champion. You just have to locate one in your community, and I'll explain how in just a moment. Really, the power of women's business centers is so proven. We demonstrated an increase in 2020, 22% beyond our reach from 2019, and we served 82,000 business clients to achieve their dreams. 70% of those clients were women, and 56% of them were people of color. To find a women's business center in your community, it's easy. You can go to our website at awbc.org. Right at the top, you can click the WBC locator and you search by zip code or town, community, and you can find one in a comfortable radius to you. Thanks to funding from SBA, Women's Business Center services are almost all completely free. They provide free counseling, free and low-cost long-term training, and connections. They give you the power of confidence and get you the resources you need to ignite, survive, and thrive in your ventures. And there's more. So Congress directed my Association of Women's Business Centers and America's SBDC to stand up a website to consolidate federal agency information and resources for small businesses at covid-sb.org. There you can find local assistance beyond women's business centers. Searches there will return results for women's business centers, as well as other resource partners like the SBDCs, SCORE offices, and Veterans Business Outreach Centers. So really, I'm just here to represent a network of people that are here to help you. And so I'm so excited to be here today, and glad to be in the company of such wonderful panelists.
Thank you so much, Corinne. Gloria, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and a little bit about your company.
Hello, my name is Gloria L. Williams, and I am the founder and CEO of Foot Nanny. I've been doing in the industry, the beauty industry, for over 25 years. I started out as a business person. I was in the office working as an administrative assistant, and I saw my boss go out for her manicures, and I decided to go into nail technology. And I went into that, and I've made more in that one day than I made in my job of going to every week, every day. I made more in a day than it took the whole week of working and getting on the train. So I decided to do something I love. I went with that. And that's why I'm here today. I can't wait to tell you a little bit more about me. I have a company now where I can say I'm a multi-million-dollar brand. This last year, I just did over 2.5 million in sales, which was my biggest year ever. COVID was a blessing and a disguise for me. And I can't wait to share some things with you. So I'm happy to be here and help anyone out I can. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And then, of course, a little bit about WIP, Women Impacting Public Policy. We are a national nonpartisan organization that I am excited to be celebrating 20 years this year. I think of our pillars, if you will, through our ACE principles. That's ACE, advocacy, community, and education. We fight every day to ensure that our women business owners that we represent on the Hill, the over 12 million, have economic equity, procurement inclusion, and of course, access to the global marketplace, amongst many others that you will find out during our conversation today. So I think that we have to, as we start this conversation, acknowledge how COVID has impacted our women business community. Many of those businesses, as we've heard earlier today, have closed their doors. Many are struggling to keep their doors open, and some have found a path to thrive during this time, to have their biggest years ever. I'd like to start with Jen and Corinne to ask you, from your vantage point as a leader, how are women's owned small businesses navigating the pandemic, and how have they faced and overcome adversity? Jen, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I have to say I've been so impressed with how our community of business owners have navigated this past year. They've been so resilient. And although, as you say, there's been a ton of loss, there really has been some amazing success stories, which we'll hear from a little bit. But we did a survey with Gusto this past early part of this year, and they had said that the results were that our women business owners were super hopeful about the future. And that 33% are planning on hiring this year, coming out of 2020 into 2021. So I feel like that's an amazing statistic. And I feel like our women business owners really want to drive the community and drive the recovery. They want to drive the economic impact in their local communities. They want to drive what that looks like on a national level. So they're really fighting to keep their workers employed, to keep them paid. They want to hire new workers, and then they're also starting new businesses. And then also one thing that we learned is that during the pandemic, 47% of our owners cut their wages by more than half, which is obviously a huge economic impact to their pocketbooks. But only 8% of them have cut their employees' wages by that much. So they're really focusing on keeping their employees paid and happy, even if that means self-sacrifice. Also, navigating their employees has been really, really difficult. Unfortunately, 20% of the businesses responded that women leaving jobs due to childcare needs, as we heard from the Congresswoman and the Assistant Administrator. 40% of businesses said that female workers were forced to reduce their hours for childcare. So those are obviously, we're taking women out of the workforce, which is not a good thing. But despite these numbers, we're looking at the positive, and we're seeing our women business owners change and adapt according to the needs of their employees, which is so important. 6% of our women business owners at the beginning of the pandemic said that they were not able to offer childcare benefits, or they did offer childcare benefits to their employees. But by year end, 14% of the businesses said that they would be able to provide childcare benefits. So while agile, we're adjusting to keeping our businesses thriving and our employees happy. And then new women business owners, in the wake of the pandemic, more and more women are finding themselves looking for new career paths. Our report with Gusto showed that minority women are driving new business starts. 47% of our survey showed that new businesses were started by minority women, which is amazing. And they did so out of necessity, the financial imperative. So I feel like, they were kind of, they had to figure something else out for the success of their families, and they did so, and that's amazing. And they had said, regardless of the pandemic, that they would do it again. 77% said that women started new businesses, that they'd do it all over again if they were given the opportunity. And 31% said that they would delay payment to themselves for a month or two to keep their business afloat. 23% that they said that they would sell personal property if they couldn't get financing to do it. So they're dedicated, they're determined, they really want to make a go of it. And our women entrepreneurs they're ready to rebuild and get started and keep things moving forward.
I could not agree with you more. The self-sacrifice that our women business owners do and running lean and mean organizations, it just is a testament to their resiliency. Corinne, I'm going to turn to you, right, from a regional perspective, for you to talk to us about some of those same ways that the business owners are navigating the pandemic.
Okay, great. Thank you. I mean, there is no doubt about it. The pandemic has been challenging for women and relatedly for their families. Yet we're seeing entrepreneurship opportunities emerge even now. Relatedly, we've all heard this, and Natalie Madeira-Cofield hit this point so well, that women's jobs have been more vulnerable and expendable during the pandemic than men's jobs. While women make up 46% of the labor market, they account for 54% of the overall job losses. And as has been mentioned here too, one cause of that is this increasing burden of unpaid care, which is a burden disproportionately by women. Recent circumstances have increased the time that women are spending on family responsibilities, 1.5 to 2 hours here in the United States. So it's not surprising women are exiting the workforce at a higher rate than could be explained by labor market dynamics alone. And where are they going? They're headed into entrepreneurship in droves. So parallel with these observations we see in the labor market, women are just attracted to some industries more than others. Unfortunately, it turns out there's a greater representation of women owning businesses in the very industries that are impacted most by the pandemic, such as accommodation and food services, education, financial and insurance, wholesale and retail, et cetera. So despite these circumstances, among the women's business center community, we are seeing there is definitely hope and there's opportunity. And the clients of women's business centers are seeing the value of their chief advocate, which is their women's business center. I mean, even during the toughest year in recent history for 2020, women's business centers helped 30,578 businesses get started and sustain their business, which was for us an increase of 30% compared to 2019. And we all know 2020 was obviously tougher. We helped leverage $362 million in capital, which more than doubled the capital leveraged in 2019. So what is the secret? What's happening in women's business centers that makes these clients experience something quite different from what we see statistically otherwise? Well, they're meeting women and they're meeting businesses where they are. So what does this look like? Well, I mentioned training and counseling. What we are seeing is overwhelmingly startups. You wouldn't believe how many new businesses are just interested in getting going. And there's training and individual counseling for each type of business offered at women's business centers, but there are other types of courses and training as well as individual counseling available as well. We're hearing what businesses need as things like how to combat overwhelm. Obviously, they've been looking for technical assistance like PPP and EIDL. We know the restaurant relief grants will be coming next. But businesses are also really needing to take a moment and work on the business and do some business planning, some financial forecasting, and maybe some renewed market research. We're also hearing that businesses are more and more now looking to expand their reach into global markets. Perhaps it's being an Amazon seller or finally opening up the Etsy business. But overall, this is the kind of thing women's business centers can help, especially COVID related. It's how to open up that business safely, how now to locate your customers. And then as you get these plans cemented, It's accessing capital, but not just accessing capital. It's finding the right capital, and a women's business center can be so helpful to help you understand what mix of capital do you need. So many of our small businesses, they don't just get one kind of a business loan one day, or find a new business grant, which just aren't as available as new business startups would hope they were. They end up usually needing a mix of different capital solutions. Perhaps it's a CDFI loan and an SBA loan, or maybe it's even sometimes you're contributing your own personal finances or doing some crowdfunding. And these are all things that women's business centers can help you figure out what's the right solution. And then I just would close this point with sharing with you that we have very real success stories out there that I think you can take a look at. For example, we have a company like Noboso, which sounds like a unique or exotic name, but Noboso created insoles that are the texture of them is very stimulating, and so it can help people who are trying to recover from neuropathy or recover from some other kind of physical injury. These insoles have a patent pending, and so Noboso needed a variety of capital options. Oh gosh, she ended up getting various different kinds of loans, including an idle loan at one point. And now she's in the midst of a crowdfunding campaign that you can actually see from her website. And so there is so much hope at the end of the tunnel, and we're seeing it every day in the women's business centers.
I couldn't agree more about so much hope. And I think our women business owners are moving, as I say, CEO, Chief Everything Officer, to being more laser focused, and certainly using this time to work on their business instead of in their business. And as we talk about working on your business instead of in your business and overcoming adversity, we have an amazing success story sitting right here in front of us, and that is with Gloria. Gloria, I'm going to turn it over to you for you to tell us about your story of triumph through the trials of the pandemic.
Okay, follow me. I am really grateful that I followed my gut, my intuition, that thing that tells you which way to go, what to do. Years ago, when I started Foot Nanny, I would say in 2009, I was toying with the idea, and in 2011 was the tweet. And people say, oh, tweet. But the tweet that Oprah gave me, it delivered feedback via email. And those emails were 99% at yahoo.com, which told me the age bracket of my main customer. It gave me the feedback that I needed to do what I'm doing now. So back then people said, oh, foot cream, nobody's gonna buy a jar of foot cream, has to do multiple things. And me being a licensed nail tech at the time, I'm like, well, why does it need to do multiple things? It needs to focus on what the problem is. And so now when the pandemic hit, people were afraid to go to the nail salons and get pedicures. They needed these things. And I look back at my emails from 2011 and I'm still on target. And they said, no, we need this Foot Nanny. So what happened was, it just took on its own life. It was like, I need pedicures, I need foot cream, I need salts. And I saw people ordering a basin, salts, the things that I've always had. I saw them buying it, basin, salt, essential oils, foot buffers. And then it was a point of, oh my God, how do I contain this? How do I contain this momentum? Is it going to keep going, or is it just for the moment? And it kept going. And so I was just shipping away. I will say that the thing that I love about what I did was, what I want other women to do is to know that whenever you have complaints, meaning people are complaining now with the pandemic, all these problems and all this, problems are what build multi-million-dollar brands. So you have to be the solution to whatever the problem is. If you hear someone saying, oh my God, my children, I can't get them to the school and this and that, that's a problem. That needs a solution. So that's what I was hearing many years ago, the problems. I can't find a foot cream. Where do I get this? What are you doing? How do you mix that? So I had a solution for it. And I will say that the pandemic definitely taught me a lot of things. I had one warehouse. I ended up having to get 3. It sounds crazy, but we had to stay separate. How could I keep the business going and not worry about dying or getting sick, and have my team not worrying about that and keep the wellness going? And I had to take a step out and just say, hey, we need 3. And all of a sudden, these warehouses were opening because people were closing. And so I put one team over here. If you live together, you work together. Strangely, that's how I hired. I would hire a mother, a daughter, a cousin, and an aunt. It was crazy how it was in the past, the way I hired. So then we went from everybody working together to everybody splitting up. We split up. I put one team over here. I put one team over here. And then we took dates, like times, the schedule blocks. So the person who does the boxes, I'm giving you an example, he would do them at night, at 10 o'clock at night, versus in the daytime with all of us there. So that way him and his son and his wife work together with no worry, no concern about safety. I was good. I slept well, because it's important as a business owner to get your rest and to sleep at peace as much as you can. And if you're not getting that feeling, we're doing something wrong. We're doing something wrong. So I would say that pandemic, it was a blessing in disguise, but I end up adding PPE to my portfolio. And so I decided to, instead of sell the PPE, give. I said, how can I sell somebody a mask when I know that, this is not, they need to survive. So we would put masks in every order, or certain orders, we would say, get a free mask. So I pivoted. So that's the pandemic part.
That is, it's such an amazing story, right? Of grit and perseverance, and
Yes.
really being solution driven as you did some course modification. I absolutely love the live together, work together business model.
Yes.
That was really, really brilliant, because at the end of the day, you empowered families and communities at that point, right? And so that is amazing. So I thank you for being a business owner who turned lemons into lemonade, if you will, right? And sometimes if we don't have sugar, it has to be lemon water. So I absolutely get it. That is, and you mentioned some things around almost your supply chain and how you were delivering upon your supply chain. And I think part of persevering and thriving at this time, especially now, is understanding your industry, understanding the supply chain and where you fit into that. And so I really applaud you for that. And, right now, I think having a diversified portfolio of business in both the public and private sector can really assist in the success of businesses, right? So as there are ebbs and flows on both sides, they typically happen at different times. And so I think one of the trends that we're seeing right now, as we sort of pivot this conversation to talk about trends in the supply chain, is this sort of ecosystem of success, whereby an agency or either even a commercial company can't necessarily do business with you right now because they don't need your product or service, but they're making introductions and recommendations to those companies who may be able to utilize you. I think the is around supplier development, where companies work with organizations like ours, right? Meaning Jen and Corinne, we, actually help people to increase their capacity. So I actually want to ask both Jen and Corinne this question. As we look at breaking barriers from a supply chain perspective, Jen in particular, what trends are you seeing in the supply chain that may be different than some of the ones that I'm seeing from, supplier development, supplier access?
Yeah, I would say supply of people, although you would think that there would be a ton of people that would be up and ready to go to work. I've been hearing from a number of our members that it's really hard to get the right employee up, especially if it's in the virtual world and those people aren't used to working in that capacity. Or even just like there's just been so much stress and overwhelm on the public in general, that getting people to get back up into work and the right workers into your facility has been a challenge. And also training in that, like you get somebody trained, you get them ready to go, and then they're like, yeah, you know what, I can't do this. And so there's a constant churn of finding the right qualified people. So we've heard like that is a big issue. Also, like we talked about a little bit ago, the moms dropping out of the workforce has been like a major problem. That's been like a huge, like now all of a sudden we have a demand of how are we going to fill these spots where these amazing qualified women we're serving, where now they have something else that they need to focus on. And so hopefully as kids are getting back into school and we're trying to figure out how to reprioritize, we can get a lot of them back in. But the other thing too is just the production of product, right? Like there in some places, production facilities just stopped, and we have some members that were relying on production facilities in different parts of the world where they couldn't get their products to sell. And so that was a big problem for like, how are we going to get the supply over? How are we going to be able to afford it now that the prices have gone up because of all of these other things? So that was a big problem. And then also the supply for the event industry completely died. As you know, I mean, planning our conferences, we were talking about that the other day, our virtual events for those business owners that were in that space, there's a complete like crash of supply there. And so like, how do they figure out how to even get them back to where they started before this, losing hundreds and thousands of dollars in their space that they had anticipated for this past year that didn't happen. So I would say that those are some of the main things that we've been seeing in terms of supply chain breakdown.
Absolutely. And I think, it happens at sort of all segments and in all places of the supply chain, which is why it's so important for business owners and women business owners in particular to know their industry better than anyone, know where they fit in that supply chain so that they can do some course modification in the best way that they can, right, to help their firms survive. Gloria, I know you face some supply chain barriers and successes firsthand. So can you share a couple of those experiences with us that you had?
Woo! So I knew when I'm the type of business that I have had the same key vendors around me for years. And I built up that old-fashioned credit building, meaning, oh, she's a loyal person. Oh my gosh, she shops with us. She constantly, I did that. I zeroed in on the main things. I'm going to say this. There's two people I'm grateful for. One is Amazon. The second one is Uline. When I saw that there was a problem getting my boxes, shipping materials from Uline, I knew it was a problem. Uline has a 24-hour operating system. They answer the phone 24 hours. They don't let the phone ring. It's on a 911 basis, meaning you dial it, they say, thank you for calling Uline, just like they say, 911, can I help you? When I would dial and they would answer and they kept that going, I said, oh, I want to buy my boxes. I need a pallet. They would say, well, that's going to take, it's probably going to get you in 3 or 4 days, which I thought was odd because they're here in California. That let me know something was going on serious and I needed to stock up. That's another reason I needed an extra warehouse because I didn't have anywhere to put the extra shipping supplies, right? My other one that I depended on was Amazon because I already had products inside of Amazon and it just kept, when Amazon kicked off, I said, okay, this is getting even more exciting, right? And crazy at the same time. Like, what? It was, you just sold an item, you just sold an item, you just sold like, so those supply chains right there, they helped me all the time. But when they told me that there was a problem because Amazon had tons of PPE and they moved into the forefront to help, the world. And so I took a back seat and said, okay, well, I'm going to do my part, let them do their part, but they still have my back. One other one was, okay, I'll save that one for later, but that was my experience.
It's perfect what you said, right? You understood your supply chain, but
yes,
components of it, but most of all, you understood the relationships and those that you had about people not letting you down. So, if there was a break that you knew there was a problem at that time. And so I applaud you for knowing that. As we talk about barriers, we cannot have the conversation without talking about access to capital. Right. Okay. We know that access to capital is a huge barrier for our women-owned businesses, both a barrier to entry as well as a barrier to growth. And this time I'm going to turn to Corinne. And Corinne, I would like you to talk about some of the current opportunities from an access to capital perspective within WBC.
Well, sure. Thank you. I think, the number one role of a women's business center is to provide technical assistance on all of the wide array of SBA offered products and programs. And there are so many loans available through SBA. And then also there are existing grants right now. And the PPP, it looks like it's probably going to be extended through May. I think that bill is headed up to the president's desk after the Senate voted on it yesterday. And so that just means an extension of that opportunity, and hopefully more women businesses will come to the table and successfully be able to apply. And when we talk about barriers to this access to capital, one example that we're hearing across the Women's Business Center network overwhelmingly is that, and this isn't the only reason, but many of the businesses who aren't able or who haven't applied for PPP didn't have their financials loaded into a commercially available accounting system. Think, QuickBooks or Sage Accounting or what have you. And that's one area that the Women's Business Center can help you quickly identify what's the right solution and get you on track so you can get your paperwork in order and get you loan or PPP loan ready. And so that's really a big piece of what Women's Business Centers do. So there's the SBA portion, and then there's everything else sort of non-SBA. And what we love about Women's Business Centers is how they respond to their local community, how they've been embedded in their community, and they just know all the partners. Sometimes the Women's Business Center organization where they're located is even a lender. In fact, 40% of our Women's Business Centers have a CDFI in the house, meaning a community development financial institution, which is not a bank, but offers some bank-like products like loans. And they're often very targeted for a specific purpose. You may have CDFIs that really specialize in loans to underserved always, but sometimes it's very specific target. And so depending on what segment you fall in can help you identify what's going to be the right CDFI for you. And again, that's an area that the Women's Business Centers are so conversant in and can help. But sometimes you're not looking for a loan. Sometimes a business says, I really think that the opportunity I need is a grant for one reason or another. Unfortunately, so many brand new businesses or folks with an idea of a business are really in search of a startup grant. And those are so few and far between. There's just not a lot of funding out there sitting and waiting for a startup opportunity in the way that most startup businesses would hope that it would come. However, it's really smart to walk into the Women's Business Center and understand what your capital needs would be, and you may be able to determine there are other ways to go about it. For example, like a crowdfunding could be one potential avenue. And again, these are all the kinds of things that Women's Business Centers are seeing the trends, and they're responding to so many other clients, and they're knowing, hey, what's working right now? What resources are available right now? And I would tell you, every state has a unique array of solutions that can be very timely, can be very current. I know the state of New York has had some state relief grant programs. I read recently where California recently extended its small business COVID relief grant program. And in many of these cases, the Women's Business Centers are actually contracted to provide the technical assistance there. So it's kind of your go-to spot, and it varies by city, by state, and by local community, what all your options might be.
Absolutely. I know that we are running out of time, and I could have this conversation all day, but that was a great point to sort of stop, to know your business resources that you have with organizations like all of ours, the Women's Business Centers, NAWBO, and WIP, who are here to be part of your ecosystem for success. And so I want to say what a great session this has been. I could talk all day long. I am asking for us to do another session so that we can continue. I know we had questions that we didn't get to, but we will provide answers to those. And so with that, I will say thank you to each of you, Jen Earl, Corinne Hodges and Gloria Williams for all of the insights that you provided today. And I am going to turn it back over to Ashlyn.
Thank you, Candace. And thank you to our wonderful panelists. I know that we all appreciated the insightful conversation on supply chain, capital access, and women's resiliency. I know that we received quite a few questions, and so if we were not quite able to get to your question, we will be holding additional sessions. And as well, please do not hesitate to reach out to Small Business Roundtable, and we will put you in touch with our lovely panelists. To round out today's event, we have some recorded remarks provided by Senators Jackie Rosen from Nevada, Representative Judy Chu from California, and Representative Chrissy Houlihan from Pennsylvania.
Hi, everyone. I'm Senator Jackie Rosen, and I'm proud to represent the great state of Nevada in the United States Senate and on the Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship. I want to thank the Small Business Roundtable for hosting this event in recognition of women-owned businesses. The past year has been incredibly challenging, and the pandemic has strained businesses across this country. Today, there are more than 12.5 million women-owned businesses in the United States. That's over 40% of businesses in the United States that are owned by women. Yet recent studies have shown that women-owned businesses were hit harder by the pandemic than their male-owned counterparts. I'm optimistic, though, because of legislation like the American Rescue Plan, which will provide much-needed support to small businesses, especially those that are women and minority-owned. Other legislation, like the Bipartisan Small Business Child Care Investment Act, which I introduced last Congress, would provide qualified nonprofit child care small businesses, many of which are owned and operated by women entrepreneurs, with access to all SBA loans that allow providers to invest in and expand their operations, creating local jobs and giving working families more options for quality child care. And legislation like the Bipartisan EIDL for Small Business Act, which I reintroduced this Congress, which would help small businesses impacted by the coronavirus pandemic by removing the caps on EIDL loans and EIDL advance grants so that businesses can keep their doors open and get the financial stability they need to recover. The strength, ingenuity, and determination of women business leaders is the reason that women-owned businesses have grown significantly in recent years, and I have no doubt that they will continue to succeed. I know this is a challenging time, but I am confident that we will overcome this pandemic because when women put their minds together in any industry, there is no new ground we cannot break and no glass ceiling that we cannot shatter. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy today's event.
I'm Congressmember Judy Chu, and I'm so glad to be here virtually with the Small Business Roundtable to celebrate the incredible resilience of women-owned businesses. So much has changed since the last Women's History Month, and female entrepreneurs and small businesses across the country have endured one of the most difficult years in our country's history. But I'm optimistic that things are turning around. As a member of the House Small Business Committee, I have been inspired by the stories of resilience and fortitude shown by the small women-owned businesses that have kept our country running. And it was among my top priorities to ensure that Congress met their needs. That is why I pushed hard to make pandemic relief programs like the Paycheck Protection Program open to sole proprietors and self-employed workers, who are much more likely to be women. And I held SBA accountable for prioritizing underserved businesses, including those owned by women, when distributing this critical assistance. Before the pandemic, female entrepreneurship was driving our economy. Women were starting new businesses at more than twice the rate of all new businesses, and revenue of women-owned businesses was growing at over 4 times the national rate. This is amazing, and it illustrates just how much we've lost over the last year. But we can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. We have already passed President Biden's goal of 100 million vaccinations, and thanks to the American Rescue Plan, millions more are getting vaccinated every day. This historic relief bill is also delivering major stimulus and growth opportunities for our economy while we near the end of this crisis. And as we look towards a successful long-term recovery, I will continue to work on ways to make affordable capital available to female entrepreneurs. That includes my legislation to authorize the Community Advantage Loan Program. This program makes SBA loans available to the underserved businesses, including those owned by women that need it most but have the hardest time securing financing from traditional banks. We are facing a challenging recovery once we defeat this virus, and Community Advantage can play a big part in ensuring that no small businesses are left behind. So I want to say thank you to everyone for taking part in today's event. Women like you who are taking risks and doing great things in business are going to be the foundation of our country's recovery from this crisis. I will continue to do my part in Congress and look forward to working together as we overcome these unprecedented challenges.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chrissy Houlihan, and I represent Pennsylvania's 6th Congressional District in Congress, where I serve on the Small Business Committee alongside the Armed Services and Foreign Affairs Committees as well. Prior to coming to Congress, I helped to build and scale small businesses in our community. And after serving in the Air Force, I moved to Southeastern Pennsylvania, where I became an entrepreneur. So I know the challenges that many small businesses and their workers face, and how these challenges have been dramatically exacerbated by this pandemic. And we all know those challenges are even greater for women. We are all on this call today because we share a core belief that our economy is strongest when women have a seat at the table. Currently, nearly 40% of all small businesses or franchises are owned by women, which is an increase from 2020. We are making progress towards parity in our economy, but of course there's a really long road ahead of us, a road that's been potentially made even longer due to the devastating effects of this pandemic. While we are seeing some positive progress on women-owned businesses, the gender gap in our workforce has widened even more dramatically during the pandemic. Recent projections estimate that employment for women may not recover to pre-pandemic levels until participation has dropped to 57%, which is the lowest level since 1988. And in the last month of 2020, the US economy lost a net of 140,000 jobs. All of those jobs were held by women. Even prior to the pandemic, there was a gender gap in the workforce, in pay and in numbers. But in a single month, all the jobs lost were held by women. All of this data is sobering, to say the least, and it's my hope that it will serve as a point of inflection, and that we as a nation will need to reckon with this disparity and work towards fixing it. Of course, you here in this room already know all of this. You've worked hard to build small businesses and to provide good paying jobs to people in your community. So as we work together towards economic parity, particularly in the small business community, we need to broaden the conversation. We need to talk about accessible and affordable childcare whenever we talk about jobs. 40% of mothers, compared to 27% of fathers, have added 3 or more additional hours of caregiving to their schedule. That's 15 or more hours a week, the equivalent of a considerable part-time job. For me, this issue is personal. Part of the reason I separated from the Air Force was due to a lack of access to affordable childcare. The on-base childcare had a waiting list that was too long, and the private options around me were too expensive with my military pay. Parents are forced to make these kinds of decisions every day across this country, putting their careers on hold to raise children. It's ludicrous that in 2021, we're still having this conversation. Raising a family and having a career should not be antithetical to one another. I've already introduced legislation that would begin to address this lack of childcare for servicewomen and help secure funding in our American Rescue Plan that would support childcare workers and facilities across the country. so that parents, particularly mothers, can get back to work knowing that their child is safe and being enriched. Beyond childcare, we need to talk about paid family and medical leave. During this pandemic, we've heard countless stories of Americans who felt sick but had no option for paid sick leave. These programs are as much about jobs as they are about healthcare. One of my proudest moments in Congress thus far was passing a bipartisan bill to provide paid leave to all 2 million federal workers. And I will continue to propose policies to expand this kind of program. These are the sorts of policies that I'll be championing in Congress, economically smart initiatives that help not only get our women back to work, but also make our small business jobs more accessible to our working women. I look forward to working with you to realize this vision. Our small business community is at its strongest when everyone is able to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswomen, for those insightful remarks. In closing, I would like to thank all of the incredible participants in today's event. Once again, a recording of this event will be featured on our website at www.smallbusinessroundtable.org. This is the first event in our series on women's entrepreneurship, so please keep an eye out for additional events from Small Business Roundtable to continue today's conversation. We want to thank all of you for tuning in today to celebrate women entrepreneurs with us. Thank you for your time.